when we're deciding whether or not to take a gap year, it's usually rooted in one of two things, and one of them is going to come back to bite you. The first one, which is going to come back to bite you, is fear. So I might take a gap year because I'm afraid that I'm not going to be a good enough applicant. And then the second one, which is the one that I like, is strategy, right? I'm taking a gap year because it's part of my strategy. So let's talk about both, because this is super, super important as a pre-PT. Turning dreams into reality. Hey, what's up, pre-PTs? How y'all doing? Welcome to another pre-PT grind episode where we are constantly dropping value and helping y'all get closer to your dream of becoming a physical therapist. My name is Ngugi. I'm a physical therapist, one of the co-founders of this platform where for years we've been helping y'all just get closer and closer to this dream of becoming DPT. So if you're interested in becoming a PT, or you're locked in and you're like, no, I'm not just interested. I know I want to become a PT, but I have certain things in the way, whether it's my fear of rejection or my grades or not knowing where to start. Well, you're in the right place. We're going to help you navigate through that and more. And if you find value in this training, then all I ask is that you just keep binging. Keep learning, because it's about your dream. It's about your career. It's about you giving yourself all the resources, all the guidance, anything that you need to get closer to this beautiful dream. And the truth is, a lot of the fears that we have, just remember this, as you're listening to this training, as you're listening to all the other stuff that we drop, just remember that there have been other students just like you who have been in the same position, who have had very similar struggles to what may sometimes feel impossible to you. And they were able to get to the other side. They were able to get into PT school. They were able to become physical therapists. And if they can do it, then you can do it too. So that's what we're here to help you navigate through and figure out. And today I'm going to talk about gap years, because we get this question a ton. We have students asking us whether they should take a gap year. We have students wondering whether that's going to look poorly on their application. They're like, well, if I take a gap year, will the schools think that I wasted time? Will the schools have questions about that? Will they think it's a bad thing? And I'm just here to kind of calm your nerves and help you navigate through that and figure out whether or not it's actually hurting your chances of getting accepted into PT school, and when you should take it versus when you shouldn't. So let's talk about it all the way through. And then, of course, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, or just reach out to us. The best platform to reach out to us is our IG account, our Instagram account, at pre-PT grind. And then at the very end of this training, I'm going to give you a free resource that's going to help you catapult yourself massively closer to your dream. So let's talk about it. Gap years. Will it hurt my chances of getting accepted if I take a gap year? So first of all, let's talk about what a gap year is, because I think that's the first part, and then let's dive through it. So technically, a gap year is when I take an extra year between when I finish school as an undergrad student and when I start PT school, right? And so I think to better understand that, let's go back to when can you technically apply to PT school, because I realized recently that a lot of students don't understand this part, because it'll help you kind of know what that means. Because I realized that a lot of students after their junior year or their senior year, or even after they graduate, are surprised by some of these things, because what they expected is not the reality. Does that make sense? And so first of all, technically, as a pre-PT, you can submit your application the summer after your junior year. Now, that means that you still need to have basically your requirements done, whether that is your prerequisite classes, the GRE, all the things that schools are looking for. And you can have one or two classes from your prereqs that are still planned or in progress. But for the most part, you got to have things locked in. So for example, if you finished your junior year, but most of your prereqs aren't done, well, you're going to have to wait until after your senior year so that you have the time to actually take those classes. Does that make sense? And so technically, if you were to submit your application after your junior year, the way it works is you would submit your application, and then if you got accepted during that cycle, which if, let's say for you as a junior, you're going to submit your application the summer after your junior year / the fall of your senior year, then if you get accepted during that application cycle, you would start PT school the next summer or the next fall. So that means that technically you would be able to finish your senior year. If you got accepted, you'd be able to finish your senior year, and then within a few weeks to months, you'd be able to start PT school, and you wouldn't have to wait a whole extra year. Does that make sense? And so with that being said, if I'm a senior, if I wait until after my senior year, if I wait until after I graduate from college, then it would still be the same process, but now there would be a gap right? There would be a whole year before I actually start PT school. Because I think sometimes as pre-PTs, I mean, it just depends on what you've learned up until this point. But sometimes we think, oh, I just apply and then I get accepted and then I start PT school right away. And it doesn't typically work like that. So that would technically be a gap year, right? But sometimes what also happens is I can finish college and then realize I still have more classes to take. So I take that extra year to take more classes after I finished college, and then I apply to PT school, which means that technically I wouldn't start PT school for 2 years after I graduate. Does that make sense? And so that's what gap years are. And so one question that students have is, will it hurt me? Like if I have a gap year, will schools look at my application as if I didn't plan accordingly, or I didn't plan properly, or I wasted time, or whatever fears we have? I just hear it a lot. And when I hear certain concerns and fears from pre-PTs over and over, I figure, you know what, let's just talk about it publicly so that y'all can calm down a little bit, but also kind of know how it works so that you're not surprised on the other side. So the first part is like, will gap years hurt you? The answer is no. The answer is no, because we have students that have literally done other careers. Like they have been 10 years into another career only to later realize they actually wanted to be physical therapists. So they might be in their 30s or even 40s, and then they decide to switch back over to becoming PTs. They take whatever classes they need, they take the GRE, they apply to PT school, and they get accepted. So if someone that has been out of the school game for a decade or more can get into school, do you think that a year or two will hurt you? And the answer is no, right? So first of all, hopefully that kind of calms your nerves. But the second part now is, when should I take it, right? When should I take a gap year? Because that's when most students are kind of like wondering, like, should I wait an extra year? And the truth is that it can either be like, when we're deciding whether or not to take a gap year, it's usually rooted in one of two things. And one of them is going to come back to bite you. The first one, which is going to come back to bite you, is fear. So I might take a gap year because I'm afraid that I'm not going to be a good enough applicant. And then the second one, which is the one that I like, is strategy, right? I'm taking a gap year because it's part of my strategy. So let's talk about both, because this is super, super important as a pre-PT. If you're deciding, now that we know the gap years are not to be feared, right? Let's figure out how to navigate through this decision-making process. So if it's out of fear, that usually means that maybe I do have the ability to apply to school, but now I'm just scared that I won't stand out. So in my head, I'm like, maybe if I wait another year, maybe I'll feel better next year. But you don't actually have a game plan, right? Whereas strategy simply means that you're looking at the objective stuff and you're saying to yourself, oh my goodness, I still have 6 prerequisites to take. I need an extra year to be able to finish most, if not all of those classes, and also be able to navigate through the GRE and also do X, Y, and Z so that I have a really good chance of getting accepted. That's strategy. And if it's strategy based, then that's a good move, right? But if it's fear based, it can come back to bite you. Here's why I say that. So we had a student about a year and a half ago, maybe a couple years ago, who was in one of our coaching programs called the Accepted System. Side note, if you want to learn more about it, go to acceptedsystem.com. It's how we hold students by the hand and help them navigate through all this stuff. But they were in our coaching program, and that student was actually planning on taking a gap year, right? And so their plan was to apply the following year, and they were basically joining our program for us to basically guide them for 12, 13 months ish so that they could apply to PT school. And one of our coaches got on a call with the student and said, okay, let's look at everything that you have, right? All your stats, all your numbers, what the game plan is, to basically build a strategy with the student. And so when they looked at everything though, the coach was like, wait, why do you want to take the gap year again? And the student was like, well, I just don't feel like I'll be ready. And the coach was like, well, objectively, let's look at it. And they looked at it and the coach was like, you can apply this year if you want to. Then here's why. Boom, 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 boom. All we need to do is the GRE and then this one other thing and then finding the right schools. And the student was like, whoa. And so the coach was like, it's your choice, right? But just understand that if you're waiting a whole year because of fear, let's kind of look at it objectively. And so what that student quickly realized was they were just trusting their own feelings as opposed to trusting what was actually in front of them. And so that student ended up applying that cycle, right? And got accepted into PT school, which means that they started PT school an entire year before they thought they were going to start PT school, right? And so that's why I say, don't, like, when you're deciding whether or not to do a gap year, it's not going to hurt you, but it's also a year removed from you being a PT, right? And a year removed from you being a PT, I mean, isn't that the goal anyway? So just kind of understand, if I am deciding whether or not to take a gap year, is it out of fear or is it out of strategy? And if it's out of strategy, good job. If it's out of fear, then that's when we need to have someone that can help us expose what our blind spots are, or help us figure out, like, how do I actually lay it out so that I can see this thing objectively, so that I can know what my next best move is. And that is the answer, right? So will it hurt your chances? No, it won't, right? But be strategic about it, because every year that you wait is a year removed from you being a PT, which is a year removed from you receiving a PT salary and you being able to serve the people you want to serve, because for many of you, this is why you're doing it in the first place. And so hopefully this helps. And if after listening to this, you're like, whoa, I still got more questions, cool. Feel free to DM us on Instagram or comment below. We got you. And if you're like, hey, I want resources to help me start being objective about my application process and knowing what my next steps are, then go to www.preptgrindnetwork.com, www.preptgrindnetwork.com, and we got you. So keep crushing it, keep taking leaps close to this dream of becoming a physical therapist, but understand how it works when it comes to gap years. They can work in your favor, but if it's out of fear, they might not be necessary. So have a good one. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.